Well, welcome friends and family. It's been such a joyous moment here that the long cloak of darkness has been cast upon us for such a long period of time, and to see so many people we haven't seen for such a long period of time. It's wonderful to see you here. Thank you very much for coming. And for those of you who are joining us online on YouTube Live, thanks for being a part of the celebration of life for Russ McMaster. Your presence is very much appreciated. So I'd like to first introduce myself. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Lance Postma, and along here with Steve Kozik, sons-in-law of Russ McMaster. We are very honored and touched to be here with you this morning to reflect and remember a dear friend, a husband, a father, and a family member. We have come here today virtually and from places near and far to gather ourselves in memory and hope, and as we do in times of sorrow, to be in community with each other. We have come to honor, mourn, and celebrate life of one we cherished and cherish still. The wheel of life has completed its circle for us, and those of us who are left behind gather to honor him and comfort each other. It is most evident our lives take meaning from the intertwining of other people. When one life is ended, those in which it is interwoven are also, for some time, carried into darkness. Not through our will, but only in time, slow-moving, yet sure and steady, the blanket will be lifted. Our purpose here is now to celebrate the many elements in the living memory that is woven in our lives with that of our dear friend, Russ McMaster. Poems and the spoken word are often occasions that provide comfort and provide the words as we capture the feelings of grief, sorrow for the loved ones that have passed. I'd like to invite Ethan and Jade Postma, who will be reciting a poem by unknown author, Remember Me. I'll remind, of course, as you come up, you can remove your mask.
Don't remember me with sadness. Don't remember me with tears. Remember all the laughter we've shared throughout the years. Now I'm contented that my life, it was worthwhile, knowing as I passed along the way, I made somebody smile.
When you're walking down the street and you've got me on your mind, I'm walking in your footsteps, only half a step behind. So please don't be unhappy just because I'm out of sight. Remember that I'm with you each morning, noon, and night.
I'd like to invite Brooklynn Hamilton, Russ's eldest granddaughter, to come to the lectern, communicate a poem about being grateful for one's life. Brooklynn.
You can shed tears that he's gone, or you can smile because he lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he has come back, or you can open your eyes and see that he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love that you have shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live for yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him and only that he is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry, close your mind, be empty, and turn your back, or you can do what he would have wanted, smile, open your eyes, love, and move on.
Thank you, Brooklynn. Could I ask Owen Berry to recite a poem from Georgia Harkness, To My Nono?
A giant pine, magnificent and old, stood staunch against the sky and all around, shed beauty, grace, and power. Within its fold, birds safely reared their young, the velvet ground beneath was gentle, and the cooling shade gave cheers to passers-by. Its towering arms, a landmark, stood, erect and unafraid, as if to say, "Fear not from life's alarms." It fell one day. Where it had dauntless stood was loneliness and void, but men who passed paid tribute and said, "It's left its mark on me. Its work stands fast, and so it lives. Such life no bounds can hold, this giant pine, magnificent and old."
Russ believed in playing the hand that you were dealt, to accept the deal and make the best of your situation. And he did this with courage, and dignity, and kindness. I'd like to call upon Steve here for his reflection. Steve.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Kozik, husband of LouAnne Kozik, brother-in-law to Kim and Rhonda, and son-in-law to Russ and Linda. I've known LouAnne ever since I was a teenager and her family. We went to high school together, and we were very close friends. Back then, I really didn't get to meet Russ and Linda a lot because I only went over to the house for parties, and Russ and Linda usually weren't around then. When I was 25, I moved to Atlanta. LouAnne and I still stayed in touch, and in our early 30s, we started dating, which meant a lot of trips back and forth from Atlanta to Toronto. And during these times, I got to spend a lot of time with the family and realized how great Linda and Russ were and the rest of her family. And when I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with LouAnne, I flew back from Atlanta and went to Russ's office one day to ask for his blessing to marry his daughter. I remember walking into his big office. He was sitting behind his desk, feeling angst and nervousness, and he was wondering what I was doing there. And I said, "Russ, I'm here to ask for your blessing. I'd like to marry LouAnne." Russ looked at me in serious thought, paused for a long while, and said, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" And that was Russ. And 22 years later, I'm happily married, and I made the right decision. So over the past week, I've been thinking about what I would say up here to honor Russ, and what a great man he was. And we all know he loved fishing and hunting and sports, and his quick wit would always make me laugh. I loved that he would be halfway through a story, and then I'd realize he was actually in the middle of a joke. That was one of my favorite things he did. There's so many things about Russ that we can say, and I wasn't really sure where to start with what a great man he was. And then it came to me a few nights ago, and it was really quite simple. Over the past 18 months, Russ has gone through more than what any one person should have to go through. But during those 18 months, there was one constant thing that stood out. It was the family that he had created. Linda was by Russ's side for everything. Countless hours at the hospital, countless hours driving back and forth, countless kilometers traveled to and from. Linda took care of him, feeding him, dressing him, walking him. She's been there physically and emotionally for Russ every single step of the way. She's been his caregiver and his loving wife. But at the end of the day, she was his best friend through it all. And supporting both their mother and their father through these trying times was Rhonda and Kim and LouAnne, sleeping in hospital chairs and who knows what else overnight at the hospital on numerous occasions, just so Linda could go home and get a little bit of sleep and give her a break. sacrificing multiple days and nights to help their mother when she needed it, and helping take care of Russ. As sisters, they were there for each other, and as daughters, they were there for their parents. We all know Russ in different ways: a husband, a father, a Nono, a friend. I can only hope that at some point in each of our lives, everyone will have a family to be there in the same way that you were all there for Russ over the past 18 months. Seeing the love and the other unwavering devotion, the caring by Russ's family towards him, is what I realized what a great man he was. Family was everything to Russ, and is what I believe to be a testimony to what a great man Russ McMaster was. Ed McMaster, Russ's brother, was not able to be here today, and he sent a note that I'm going to read. Dear Russ, I know how much you have suffered these past few years. Your spirit was amazing. I will miss our weekly conversations, however short they have been. You are certainly blessed to have such loving support from Linda and your family during your illness. I remember the time when Uncle Ryan gave us boxing gloves for Christmas, and we would have a boxing match every Saturday afternoon on the front lawn with a line of cars half a mile long to watch our weekly event. We could have charged for admission, which would have been more lucrative than piling cement blocks for Dad. I also remember when Dad requested us to unload 1,000 bags of cement and paid us 2 cents a bag, which we unloaded in half a day. That would kill an average guy. We proceeded to our favorite watering hole for a few yellow pops to hydrate. Russ and I were raised by two hardworking parents, Harold and Tess, who raised us to appreciate the value of life. Russ and I worked harder than anyone at the plant, and that dollar sure tasted good by the end of the day. I know in my heart you are resting in peace and we'll be together again one day. My family and I are so sorry that we could not attend your service today. Until we meet again, dear brother, love and blessings to your family, Ed. I'd like to now invite Russ's brother-in-law, Gil Calio, to come up and say a few words.
These guys are way taller than I am. I moved it down already. Thanks, man. I need all the help I can get, as you can see. Eh? Anyways, Russ would totally understand that these notes that I got here was written really slowly, so to make sure that I don't read it too fast, okay? I will always remember Russ for all the fun times that we had together. However, there are a couple of adventures with both Linda and Russ that really stand out. Off the west coast of our country, in 2006, we did a 6-day tour on a 53-foot schooner, the Anvil Cove, along the east coast of the Queen Charlotte Islands, down to the very southern tip of Haida Gwaii, all the way to Ninstance, which is a UNESCO Haida World Heritage Site. And you just couldn't help but feel the presence of, the people that lived there, centuries ago in that rainforest. It's unbelievable. And every day we paddled our kayaks from the mother ship, the schooner, and explored what we called the Great Canadian Galapagos. During those little paddles, his joy was totally evident about what he was seeing and experiencing there. He had a grin on his face from ear to ear He's looking down through the crystal clear waters when we're paddling those kayaks in the shallow water, and all the life that was present down there is just unbelievable. He so enjoyed the outdoors. We even got to soak in the natural hot springs of Hot Spring Island, which is about halfway down from Queen Charlotte City down to Ninstance, right on the shores, in the open, in the middle of nowhere. The only place you could get, the way that you get there is with a boat or with a float plane, and there's nobody around, and you're sitting in these beautiful crystal clear waters, hot waters. Again, huge grins on Russ and Linda's face in doing so. On this trip, Russ tried his hand at fishing as well. The odd time when we were anchored with the boat for the night, we'd dip a line into the water. And the look on Russ's face after fighting this mighty fish, at least 20 minutes he was tugging on his line and hauling this thing up, and it kept sinking down fast, and it felt like, gee, this is a really big freaking fish, right? So he gets it up to the surface, and it turns out to be bullwhip kelp lashed around a great big freaking rock. And I'm not kidding you, the depth of the water there when we had the lines down, it was at least 250 feet down. So he was pretty tuckered out. Anyways, all was right again, though, following a good night's sleep in his lower bunk on the boat. And of course, Scotch always helped, as well as the beautiful meals that we had on board. In 2012, well, Russ and I took my rigid hull Zodiac inflatable and motored in the rain for 2 hours, bashing through the 3-foot waves, heading north. And I couldn't wipe the smile off Russ's face with the fresh air and the adventure, right? And again, like up there, there's nobody around, right? Social distancing never was a problem and still isn't up there. So we bashed through those up to a camp which had cabins on it that we could rent. There's no logging camp on logs floating up and down with the tides, anchored to shore. And we had our own little house there. And, you know, Russ's eyes are like this, looking at the eagles and stuff around there. It's just unbelievable to see the face and Russ's joy. On this trip, Russ was pretty darn busy catching lots of coho and seeing the killer whales. One time we were standing by our cabin there in the morning, and we seen a pod of killer whales swimming by, and Russ says, "Oh, can we get closer? Can we get closer to those whales, right?" So we jumped into my Zodiac, zipped right on over there, and we tried to get as close as we could to them, but of course they can hear the motor and whatever, and they dive right underneath our boat, right, and come up the other side. And the look on his face is priceless, right? And again, Russ had a good night's sleep, although he slept on a couch that was way too short. Again, it's a good thing there was Scotch, fresh crab, and fresh fish to eat. Another trip was with Linda and Russ, Mary Ellen and I, to the Greek islands. And this adventure was as much fun as any of the ones, right? But this time there was no holes barred as we traveled and ate and slept in style. The only drawback, as Russ related, were the number of museums and clay pots. So one morning, Russ told our guide, he says, "I'm sorry, but you know, Gil and I have a busy afternoon. We have to go back to the hotel and rearrange the fridge." And so we had so much fun just walking the streets in Athens, and we'd stop when we got thirsty for a good old Greek Mythos beer, and then have fun going into the t-shirt shops and just busting our guts reading all the stuff on the t-shirts. It was always so much fun to do anything with Russ, right? He was a great partner and great friend. And yes, so a lot of times he said, I think the Metosphere is calling. There were many other adventures too in Hudson, Florida, golfing, and I see some friends here that had done the same thing with him. And at their home, for lobster dinners, exploring the waters of Douglas Channel and Kitimat, catching crab, just to name a few. I know you all have your own stories, and you all know what he did. What a great husband, father, Nono, athlete, hunter, golfer, and joker he was, and above all, loved his family dearly. I would like to close with one of Russ's favorite sayings whenever we had a scotch together. He'd say, here's to you and here's to me, and should we ever disagree, here's to me. Love you, Russ, and here's to you.
Thanks, Gil. That was great. I'd like to now invite Gary Cadrat up to say a few words. Gary's been friends with Russ for ever, I guess.
You got her. Do I need that?
Find a bigger one.
When I stand on the bench. Okay. Hello, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Gary Cadrat, better known as Caddy or Cats. That's my nickname. Russ and I had 49 years of friendship and 29 years as neighbors. Excuse me. Okay. We watched each other's families grow. Yeah, you can read something for me? Okay. Recoup myself.
And have families of their own. There were cottage trips.
Ice fishing, Oktoberfest, Father's Day golf, and barbecues.
Bill runs invitationals and almost numerous vacations taken with many here. Did you ever win that?
I don't think so. Russ used to cheat. Anyway, winters in Florida playing golf, plus many golf trips with the gang. There are so many stories I could tell you about Russ, but I will just share a few with you today. Some of us were at the cottage on Long Lake for a few days and having a great time. This one day, the girls decided to go out for the day, leaving us boys to do work around the cottage and have a few beers. While we were cleaning up, Russ cut his hand on a tin. I told Russ not to move, as I am a first dater, and I will fix him up. I then went to my shaving kit and brought back a few first aid articles. After I pulled out the cream, Russ noted that it was preparation H. And he told me, that is for assholes. To which I replied, so what's your point? Well, we all had a good laugh and I fixed him up and we got on with our day. Another time Russ mentioned to me that he would like to get a set of Bulls balls. I looked at him confused and asked why. He said, well, as you know, I have 3 beautiful daughters and I would like to hang them by the front door just to remind their dates that this is what happened to the last guy who brought one of them home late. And that's true. So this day would not be complete without telling the Fluffy and Snoopy story about our family dogs. After we'd been neighbors for about a year or so, Snoopy got through the fence and had his way with our Fluffy, who was in heat. Once we scared Snoopy away, I took Fluffy to the vet and paid for a pill so she wouldn't have puppies. When we returned from the vets, Pat decided Russ and Linda should pay half the bill. So Pat said she was going next door. I tried to talk her out of it because I knew what kind of response she would get from Russ being such a quick wit. Well, I wasn't wrong. Once Pat explained the situation to Russ, he then said, and he leaned and he said, "Let me get this right. You want us to pay for half the vet's bill when you should really be paying us for stud fees. We could have sold Liza Snoops' puppies and all made some money and then proceeded to close the door in her face." We have had many laughs over this incident over the years. There are many stories about Russ, but I will save them for another time. As you all know, Russ had the gift of making anyone in his company laugh with his cutting-edge humor, and that we will all miss. He was also a great guy and a good friend to many. Russ, I'll see you when I see you. Okay, yeah.
And when I get there, you and I will have a beer and play some crib. Rest in peace, my friend.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay. Now.
Voltaire, the French philosopher, said, "Not to be occupied and not to exist are one and the same for any man." With these few words, what he has done, he has captured the purpose in life, and that is to work, create, and be concerned about the world around you. So how does one measure a purposeful and meaningful life? Positive psychologist Dr. Martin Seligman, in his research, has determined a meaningful life is one in which we find a deep sense of fulfillment by employing our strengths for the greater purpose other than ourselves. In other words, deploying your strengths in service of something much larger than you are. Seligman found that most people are fulfilled who've had discovered and exploited their unique combination of signature strengths. Strengths such as humanity, kind feelings toward others, temperance, humility, modesty, and prudence, and persistence, staying the course despite challenges or failure. One of Russ's signature strengths was his humanity and the ease in which he would develop relationships with peers, colleagues, and business partners. None of them were accomplished in a disingenuous way for personal gain, but rather very authentic. He would actually be interested in what you had to say. He wanted to learn and listen and share. And this allowed him to build loyalty and deep connections with people he came in contact with. A signature strength most characterized with positive emotion is humor. As you can see, the theme that's emerging from the discussions and reflections, Russ embraced it. In fact, he was a master. His wit and communication skills and ability to frame and deliver jokes placed him at ease and allowed for the development of strong bonds and relationships, especially amongst his closest friends. In his retirement, of course, email communication was no longer required for business purposes. It became the platform for telling jokes and sharing jokes. During gatherings with friends and family, Russ often started a conversation with something like, "Did you ever hear about the priest, the rabbi, and the atheist?" approaching life playfully and not taking himself too seriously, and making others laugh around him is a strong memory that we all will hold. Deeply devoted to his family, Russ was in service to them, enacting virtues of persistence and humanity, a strong sense of responsibility for those most close to him. With love and reassurance, he guided his family and encouraged them to grow through the challenges of life without sheltering or coddling, preparing them to lead independent and successful lives. His humor, his perspective, and transcendence helped cultivate a very special bond with his grandchildren. And in return, their admiration, love, and connection. With the enthusiasm and genuine interest in their development, he provided pearls of wisdom when appropriate and shared laughter and fun during occasions, family gatherings, and visits. Now, a meaningful life cannot be realized in the absence of difficulty and challenge, and the strength and resilience that is required to do something meaningful requires one to experience and overcome hardship, especially in the face of challenge. Examples, include out of high school, Russ did not immediately pursue a post-secondary education, opting to work with his father and his brother at the block plant, where he made and loaded by hand concrete blocks, and then later a blaster in the mines of Sudbury, Ontario. In his work, he bore holes overhead and packed the drilled holes with dynamite. An entry step into post-secondary program at Algonquin College followed then shortly after. Through the encouragement of his brother Ed, he attended Michigan Tech University in Houghton, Michigan, where he became a Husky, joining the varsity football team while pursuing a degree in business. In between, he convinced Linda to marry him, and to make things more complicated, introduced a child, LouAnne, into the world. Russ, upon graduation, landed a job with Imperial Oil in Toronto in the sales and marketing department. Russ recounted so many times about being so nervous the first day where he'd have to report to work. In fact, he took the trip to the office the day before. Linda drove. And on his first day of work, he packed 2 dress shirts, knowing well that once the time that he arrived at work, he would have swept right through the first one that he arrived, and he could change. I am sure the difficulty associated with leaving a large corporation, an established company, after 9 years to join 2 peers offering a job with an upstart company would have been difficult and not without risk or indecision. And along the way, no shortage of challenges, headache, and moments of lost confidence. It worked out and brought with it much success, recognition, promotion, and a comfortable lifestyle for Linda and the family. Voltaire reminded us, for a person not to be occupied and not to exist are one and the same thing. Russ lived a life well examined, gainfully engaged, and purposeful through activities and through his vocation as a professional, a husband, a father, and a dear friend. So how do we measure a purposeful and meaning life? David Eagleman explains that each person has 3 deaths, not just one. The first is when the body ceases to function. The second is when the body is consigned to the grave. And the third is that moment, sometime way in the future, where your name is spoken for the last time. Russ, through his life and his unique strengths, leaves behind a much celebrated accomplishments and a strong connection with family and friends and acquaintances. He has imparted a lasting impression on all of us and undoubtedly led a meaningful life. Fond memories of him and his name will live in collective thoughts. Each time we gather and connect on those occasions, we will speak of him fondly, now and in the future, time and time again. I could ask at this point to have the daughters of Russ, LouAnne, Rhonda Berry, and Kim Postma to come forward and share their reflections.
Good morning. I'm Russ's daughter, LouAnne. I know that today is going to be a heavy day, but I wanted to share with you some special memories that I had with my dad. As you know, family meant everything to him, and he would share the stories of his life. Our family get-togethers were fun, and for some reason, they always centered around food and drinks. We'd be up at the cottage celebrating a birthday or holiday, and what'll you have was how my dad greeted you. We did enjoy having that gin martini, shaken well, a couple olives, straight up. We had appetizers, which would then lead to a selection of wines, pairing with steak, a prime rib supper. It was not a quiet dinner table. We were always laughing at the stories being told. Our world was turned upside down on September 20th, 2019. That was the day my dad had his first stroke. We really didn't know what was going to happen after that. And for almost 6 months, he was in and out of hospitals. My mom never left his side, and every day we went to the hospital to help him with his meals. We encouraged him with his physiotherapy. We changed his clothes, making sure he wasn't too hot. And we took him for walks up and down the hallways of the hospital. He really struggled for a while. That brain bleed really changed him, and he knew it. He hated how it made him feel, and that he wasn't able to do certain things any longer. But as time went by, my dad seemed like he was recovering. He was becoming more independent, and things seemed to be improving. It was becoming more hopeful. And he was finally able to come home. And then he went blind. My dad is now totally dependent on my mom. She had to do practically everything for him. In the beginning, I didn't know how this situation was going to work out. Life was extremely difficult for both of them, yet somehow they made it work. I would go to my parents' place at least once a week, sometimes to bring them to the hospital, sometimes to help organize things around the house. But most often I would go there and hang out with my dad while my mom ran errands. We would go for walks around the block. We would go downstairs. My dad would do his exercises. He was always so encouraging to me while I ran on the treadmill. He would go up, then we'd go upstairs, have lunch, then I would read him the paper. I would start with the sports page. I would read him the Leaf stats, next who the scoring leaders were. We would talk about football, how the Bills were doing, how Steve Steelers fared, and how come Tom Brady was always just so good. I read him the golf highlights, and we talked about the beautiful courses he played. I'd fill him in on the Formula One race that weekend, and he would tell me, I was at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Kimi Räikkönen was driving for Ferrari, and he won the world championship. I was always watching sports with my dad. When we were younger and we weren't skiing on the weekends, at home we'd be watching college basketball in the wide world of sports on Saturday afternoon. And after that, we'd watch Hockey Night in Canada. NFL football or golf was on all day Sunday. And I was always asking him questions. I was probably a little annoying. I was in Florida 2 weeks ago when I got the heartbreaking phone call about my father. I had to fly back to what was going to be a bittersweet weekend, but at least my mom, Rhonda and Kim, and I were with my dad. During the day, we were making meals, drinking wine, laughing, and talking about the past few years. I know in my heart my dad really appreciated we were there for him and for my mom. and we were all together as a family once again. I feel grateful to have had as much time with my dad as I did. I was with my father at the end, just like he was at my beginning. The days and years to come will not be the same without my dad, but they'll be filled with life and love, because that's the example he lived for us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Rhonda Berry, and I'm the favorite. Middle daughter of Russ and Linda. As a child, we have stories about our parents and often see them only in relationship to us. I was fortunate enough to see my dad not only as a father and grandfather, but as a man in his own right. As some of you know, I had the pleasure of working with and in the same industry as my dad for 30 years. I am grateful that we shared this commonality. Everything he needed to show me and share with me is now a part of me. He contributed deeply to who I am. No conversation was ever off the table. I was allowed to be real and complex, kind of. From my first day at the office, Dad said, "What happens at the office stays at the office." But we soon broke that promise to each other, and much to Mom's chagrin, dinner talks turned to the price of crude, the impact on the cost of asphalt, and the latest tender results. Dad retired from McAsphalt in 2012, but continued to ask about his colleagues, company events, and industry news every time we were together. He enjoyed a long and prosperous career at McAsphalt. To quote the current leadership team, Russ's hard work ethic, fierce competitiveness, sharp wit, and sense of humor helped McAsphalt through many tough times, forging the business and strengthening it for the next generation. Adding to that, the tutelage of a couple of Carrick boys, the boys, as Dad finally referred to them. They were often in his mind and forever in his heart. They were his chosen family. We have all heard the proverb, "Find something you love to do, and you'll never have to work a day in your life." I believe that Dad found what he loved to do when he joined McAsphalt. I have received many emails from his colleagues and business associates. They remember him as being well-respected, a man with a big heart, a great sense of humor, a true gentleman, the supporter of the underdog, honorable, possessing a great business acumen, and having a crazy golf hook. "I'd rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission" was the mantra for Dad's work life. He forged his path and lived it well, and will be deeply missed by those who knew him. As a daughter, I know the impact he has had on my life and the life of my family. He was my mentor, my protector, and my hero, and I was truly humbled over the past 12 days to learn that many of his associates felt the same way. It is possible to miss someone, but to be so happy for their liberation. I've been reminded that grief finds a different path for everyone. If you love something, let it go. If you love someone, let them go. I love you, Dad. Jeez. Sorry, Kim. She keeps watching sad movies. It's killing me. All right, let's try this. So I'm the last of the trio. I'm Kim. I'm going to try and get through this. All right. I work as a teacher and a housemaster, and I came across this activity I like to do in the dorm in the classroom. I want to share it with you because it really spoke to me. I feel strongly that my dad practiced this in his life on so many different levels.
That was a really bad, sad movie. A teacher asked her students to list the names of other students in the room on 2 sheets of paper. When she told them to think of the nicest thing they could say about each of their classmates and write it down. As the students left the room, each one handed in the papers. The teacher wrote down the name of each student on a separate sheet of paper and listed what everyone else had said about that individual. The next class, she gave each student his or her list. Before long, the entire class was smiling. "Really?" she heard whispered. "I never knew that I meant anything to anyone, and I didn't know others liked me so much," were most of the comments. As we received condolences from so many pockets of groups of people in my dad's world, it became very evident that he practiced this often. The kind words, the great memories, and the mentioning of all the great things he left you with was heartwarming. In some of them, I could picture them myself in that very moment in time. I really make connections with symbolism. It gives things meaning when you can visualize them. It is clear my dad was like a beautiful white pine, much like Owen's poem. His roots stretched over long distances and across many people's lives. His soft needles show that although he can be tough and resilient, he was also a kind soul. Although he was not tall in stature, he definitely was a large presence and was easily noticed when he stepped into a room. He touched so many with his kind words, his drive, and his amazing sense of humor and wit. When he passed on Monday morning, a cardinal perched itself outside on a bird feeder in the yard and sat and looked at Rhonda and my mom. We later found out that the cardinal appears, it is when angels are nearby. When God sends a cardinal, it's a visitor from heaven. When you keep seeing the cardinal, it means a heaven-sent messenger of love to you. The most amazing thing is that I have continued to see a cardinal each morning perched outside on my fence in the backyard, and I'll take solace to know my dad will always be nearby. This symbolism is very much a part of my life. I look back at the family and can't help thinking that we are very much like a newspaper. Mom even asked where the newspaper was this morning. The very same one that was delivered to our house each day as far back as I can remember. Mom is the editorial section, and she would sit with Dad and have long chats and tell Russ what's what. He would be the letter to the editor and replied with a sarcastic remark, a quip of humor, or be a little sassy self, "Yes, Linda," which was always the right answer. Lou was the sports section, as she mentioned in her reading. She would come in and chat hockey and football, and her latest addition to the section was the F1 racing. Sorry, Lou, I don't think Dad liked F1's racing. He passed shortly after his editorial on Kimi Räikkönen. Rhonda was the business section, and she would have Dad's ear, his advice, and his perspective on everything in the world they shared. I never would have believed that two people were so enthralled with pavement. in my life, but they were held captive in their conversations for hours. Then there is me, the comic section, which I know Mom loves to read and Dad would emulate. I like to think that I was given one of the most precious gifts of all. I didn't think too much about it until now, when people who are near and dear to my parents continue to say, "You're just like Russ." Both my son Ethan and I, along with Vanessa and Carson, who all seem to have that trait, will continue the Russ legacy of quick wit and the ability to make people laugh and finding the true strength in timely humor. Sometimes not so timely. As a member of the boys' club, the gatekeeper to the drinks, my dad always found a way to inject laughter, love, and a pinch of sarcasm in his day. His trait was evident when I asked my dad, who was painting the fence between Pat and Gary's place in Markham, "What are you doing?" He answered, "Picking blueberries." Not much was said after that, but I saw him doing the same thing the next day, and I said to him, "I see you're still picking blueberries." He laughed and handed me a paintbrush and said I should start picking too. And the cycle begins. As you have heard from everyone, he leaves us with so many funny stories. How to stop a rolling burger down the driveway 101, how to manage your neighbor's pets, and he took on Bing's 3-piece bath ensuite, and the neighborhood was never quite the same. How to keep a VW bug on the road in tight turns. You just need a bunch of buddies to roll it back up onto the road if it doesn't quite navigate its way the way it should. Isn't that right, Cookie? Or his heroic save as he tackled my cousin Steven going out of control down a mountain in sunshine while his brother Ed shot past him in a bright orange coverall screaming, "How do you stop these things?" To having us girls find the mouse playing the trombone under the couch. We never did find the mouse. And our favorite stories are usually around how to transport Snoopy, who would whine, cry, and eventually throw up in the car on the way to Sudbury. How not to ever stop on a 5-hour car ride to the cottage because bathroom breaks were not an option. To barbecuing with Nono Lindo. Dad always went in, not trying to impress Olindo, but rather to pretend to mess up the task. He would be relieved of his duties to get a beer earlier. Gil, I believe you were his partner in crime with this one. Even when he was struggling the most, he still found humor. He was black and blue from taking a tumble down the stairs, and he wanted us to take a picture of his backside and post it on Facebook and let everybody know that you should never use the toilet paper he was using. In the days and weeks to come, I know more stories will be shared that will make us laugh. A lot of them will surround golf, hunting, and fishing, with a few hundred surrounding cottage life and all the girls, including the dog. So take the time and cherish what these memories, love, and laughter bring to us. People in society forget that life will end one day, and we don't know when that one day will be. So like Russ, tell the people you love and care for that they are special and important. Share these great memories together so you can always remember the person with a smile on your face. Thank you, Dad, for filling our lives with so many great memories and will continue to make us laugh, smile, and know you will always be with us.
Thank you, LouAnne and Rhonda and Kim. It's surprising you're so normal. It's wonderful. A few announcements before we conclude. I'd like to thank all of our readers. Gil, thank you so much, and Gary for sharing the stories, and of course Ed McMaster for sending in the letter. It was wonderful just to share. Fond memories of the days past and that of the most recent past as well. A special expression of gratitude too. Thank you for Doug Anderson, who's back there. He has been working the camera and delivering this out there to everyone else from around the world. So we appreciate him, and of course for Low and Low for their service and comfort and support during this very troubling time. I'd like to just remind everyone in the audience, of course, here that we have a guest book that's at the back of the chapel. And before you depart, please make sure that you spend a moment or two just to write down your name in the guest book, maybe perhaps a note if you feel able. We would love to look at that a little bit later. So please consider doing that as you leave. And I'd be remiss, of course, if Russ was here, he would have been very disappointed if we didn't do anything to do with food or drink or toasts. So there is a grazing box that will be handed out to each family. And although we cannot be with you together, the request is that you take the grazing box. It's full of wonderful food and a little drink. And for you, with your families or your loved ones, just a nice toast to Russ when you're able and when it's suitable. And on behalf of Linda, she has been overwhelmed by the expressions of sympathy, and the cards and flowers she's read each one. And I was at the house last Saturday, Kim and I, and I really thought that the entire stock of the Uxbridge florist here was in Linda's house. It was wonderful. The outpouring of support has been overwhelming at times. So thank you to all of you who have reached out and shared little memories and extolled your sympathy. You'll notice in the bulletin that you may have received, there is a little pamphlet that has the Lord's Prayer. And to conclude our service today, our celebration of life, if I could invite you to join me in unison in reciting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from